Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this Game video we're going to be discussing Nintendo's NX. So there have been, of course, a lot of different reports about the NX, including the fact it's going to be utilising cartridges, it's going to have a built-in screen, but a recent quote by the Pokemon Company CEO, Ishihara, is pretty succinct, but it does give us a lot of insight into what Nintendo were trying to do. The NX is trying to change the concept of what it means to be a home console or a handheld device, and we will make games for the NX. Now, the latter part is not really surprising, since, well, you know, Pokemon's pretty much synonymous with Nintendo right now, but the home console or handheld device adds further credence that, yes, this will be an amalgamation of sorts. Now, there have been an awful lot of rumours concerning the NX, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video. For example, Pierre Schneider, who is one of IGN's founders, mentioned that from his sources there will be a 720p resolution screen on the device, and there will indeed be detachable controllers, stating this won't be the main way to control the games. And he also added that a developer recently talked to him about the NX, defining the console as a, quote, reboot for Nintendo. So, of course, the reboot doesn't necessarily give us that much indication of what the console is, but it pretty much sounds like Nintendo are trying to go back to its roots, but it's also kind of weird because it's also not really root orientated. I mean, when you start talking about motion controls, and of course when it comes to the controller itself, that is even crazier. We've heard various reports on how the system is going to be dealing with its detachable controls, including some of them being something along the lines of almost like a camera built in, and then you basically attach almost, I guess the best way of describing it would be hollow plastic peripherals, and then you can use those to do whatever you need to do. For example, it could be a theoretical analog stick, or it could be a D-pad, or it could be something entirely different. For example, a trackball, or whatever the game itself requires. And what the developer would have to do, therefore, is to program whatever piece of software or the game to recognize that and interact with the camera and or lens system on the console. And from what we can understand, it's kind of weird because it will also recognize motion. Now, immediately people are being drawn into the 720p resolution, and I can imagine this is probably because it is a handheld device. Obviously, on a smaller screen, like for example 7-ish inches or 8 inches or something below, assuming you're holding it at a fairly decent distance from your face, in other words, you've not got your nose pressed up against the screen, there's a good chance that that resolution will probably be okay, and most likely because if it is going to be portable, there's power envelope issues. In other words, they can't suck up too much energy. So my theory, and I have had this shared with many different people, I mean, I'm not the only one that's come up with this by any stretch of the imagination, is that the console will operate in a couple of different modes. For example, it will be dockable, and the clock speed will be a little higher, and therefore it will be better to output, let's say, to 1080p or whatever the developers are targeting. But if it's in mobile, to save battery, the clock speeds will be lower. So for example, rather than, I'm just throwing out numbers here, 1500 megahertz CPU, it's going to downclock to like 1000 or whatever it is for that particular item. And we've also heard a hell of a lot of rumours concerning the CPU, the GPU and the memory inside the system. The most prolific is that Nvidia are going to be providing the internals of the system. It's going to be essentially based upon Tegra, but some folks are saying it's going to be an evolved version. Other reports are saying that that's not the case. And honestly, despite the fact that we have had some leaks, like the fact that it's going to be using cartridges, Nintendo have kept a pretty damn tight lid on this. And whether you like what you're hearing about the system, and to say that you like it or dislike it at the moment is a bit different, it's a bit difficult. It's a bit like me describing Star Wars to you as something along the lines of some of the battles are in space, some of them not. Sometimes you use lasers, good guys versus bad guys, and you know, there's abilities that aren't really magic, but I guess you could sort of call them magic, and some people can shoot lightning. Do you like the sound of the movie? there's nothing there for you to work on. The concept is so ambiguous. You're just like, I don't know. My problem with this, however, is that we're still waiting for this information, and supposedly the console is going to be released in some point in March. We don't have a firm release date at this point, let's be honest. And it's kind of crazy because when you have these quotes like, once again, the NX is trying to change the concept of what it means to be a home console device or a handheld device. And of course we've had other quotes from Nintendo that they're trying to, once again revolutionize. They're trying to be very different. They're trying to invigorate the market. They're trying to reboot. These are all phrases which are very exciting, but they also get people's expectations up a lot higher. And I do wonder if in reality we're going to be able to see Nintendo, hit this. And it's kind of crazier because then you're getting certain developers, and we've all seen the quotes online where some developers have said, we'll only support the console if it's at least as powerful as the Xbox One. Some folks have said that the system is really cool, it's excellent, but that still means theoretically if the system is not as powerful as, let's say, an Xbox One, in theory we might be missing out on certain titles like multi-platform games. And obviously it's way too early. Some people would argue, yeah, but I buy an NX for the Marios and the Pokemons, which is great. Problem is, some people do want a system which is going to run a multitude of different games. It's just a completely weird situation we're in with the NX. Like, although the Wii, when I first heard about it, the idea it had motion controls, while I didn't like it, the concept, I understood what Nintendo were doing with it, because it was a pretty simplistic concept. It was a less powerful system, it was going to be cheaper, and they were aiming to try out different games. But in a way, it was almost like a test console. They were basically using an overclocked GameCube, if you will. With the N64, it was very much similar. You can argue about whether Nintendo made a mistake with the cartridges, especially because of the prohibitive pricing of some of the games. Some folks simply did the math of like, well, to buy Turok Dinosaur Hunter or whatever on launch, I could pick up 2 copies of another game. I could buy 2 games for my PlayStation 1 or my Sega Saturn. I know what I'm going to be doing. But you could understand the idea. You could understand the concept of like the analog stick to add in additional precision controls. You can understand the idea of the C buttons to adjust the camera. You can start understanding why they would use cartridges for the faster loading times, and certainly one can make the compelling argument that cartridges is a very smart move on Nintendo's part, especially for a handheld. A, it takes less energy. B, it theoretically means that you can actually expand the capabilities of the handheld, because you could put in separate processing chips, like for example the Super FX on the SNES or the Super FX2, or even the SVP, Sega Virtual Processor, which was used on Virtua Racing on the Genesis/Mega Drive. And basically you cannot do that with a CD or a DVD or a Blu-ray. And of course the other benefit is you don't need to worry about the disc scratching, and it also means you can cut down storage space in that respect. Although it does kind of make me wonder how it's going to happen, how that's going to work when it comes to digital games and all of that as well. So basically I've said a whole bunch of words to you, and you're probably thinking to yourself, well, gee, is this going to be a good system? Or you possibly have your own preconceived notions. You might be like, yes, I need the NX, or My issue is that Nintendo are coming into this in a very weird time in the industry. You've got, well, let's not even to count PC. I was about to go into a whole PC thing, but let's ignore that, because I was going to say you've got, the new GPUs coming out, you've got the new CPUs coming out, but let's ignore the PC. Let's say that you're just focusing on the consoles for now. You've got the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, which are out now. You've got the Xbox One S, which one can argue is slightly interchangeable with the original Xbox. You've got the Xbox, you've got the PS4 Slim, which one can make a very compelling argument is the PlayStation 4. But then you've also got the PS4 Pro, which is released later this year. You've got the PlayStation VR, which is released once again this year. You've got a whole plethora of games being released over the next 6-ish months. And then at the end of, or end-ish of next year, which is 2017, as of the time I'm recording this video, there's going to be Scorpio. And I'm not saying that you can't buy everything, but most folks are not going to want to do that. So what I'm saying is that it's very weird, because I want the NX to be successful, but I do really wonder what Nintendo have in store in this damn system. And all of these rumours at the moment are just crazy. I mean, a handheld device hybrid, kind of weird. I mean, it's pretty much obvious it's going to be dockable, and I'm assuming when it docks, you're going to be able to plug in the traditional HDMI cable, and power is obviously going to be routed, so you're going to be able to plug it into your TV, and then obviously you're going to be able to detach controllers and then use it however you would like in your living room, and all of that sounds really cool, but I want to know what the differences are going to be. Like, for example, are there going to be certain games which just simply do not physically work in handheld mode? I doubt it. Are there going to be certain games which, you know, are going to run at like 30 frames a second rather than 60, for example? Are we going to have large differences in the resolution controller's going to be? What's it even going to sodding well look like? I mean, that's another one. I mean, if it's mobile to me, then that to me sounds like it's going to be, let's say 3DS, maybe a little bit bigger. Let's say it's 1.25, 1.5 times. Let's say it's bigger than the PS Vita by a little bit. That's kind of tiny. It's just, I mean, are we talking Wii U gamepad size? What? And how is it even going to work when it docks in? What differences are going to be in the hardware? It's just, I don't know. I mean, I guess at the very least Nintendo's getting a lot of press, and I think that when they do finally announce the damn system, I think the people are going to go nuts for it, and there will certainly be a lot of speculation online and in, you know, the workplace, and God knows where else. You're going to be saying to your friends, I really want an NX, and your friend's going to say no, and there's going to be a lot of discussion, which in Nintendo's defense is a really good thing, but I don't know. With the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, I wasn't excited about the systems from the perspective of we're going to be going into a new age of gaming, because I knew that it was going to be business as usual. You've got a controller, and yes, the PS4 controller's a little different, the Xbox One controller's a little different, and they have technically changed things like adding sharing and all that kind of crap, but for the average person, if you don't want to do sharing, you don't want to send photos and upload them to Facebook, you don't want to do any of that, all you want to do is put in a copy of Witcher 3 or whatever game it is and just play it, it's business as usual. But with the NX, it's not like that, and so it's really hard, I think, at the moment for people to have like this, get a really good read on it. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Let me know what your thoughts are on NX and what your hopes and dreams are. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.